to just quickly thank UNHCR, UNICEF, and UN Women, our co-sponsors, and of course our hosts here. I want to thank my co-panelists, but I also want to give a special thank you to Habiba and Gayatri for so generously sharing your stories. I can't say enough about how much that means, and thank you. We also have in the room a number of other affected activists and organizations, activists that are working with organizations that are working at the national level that are fighting for gender equal nationality rights. So I really want to honor all of you and my colleagues here for the tireless and absolutely essential work that you're doing. So thank you. So you raise a very good question, Yvonne. Why do these discriminatory laws still exist? Well, first, let's say that the vast majority of countries globally have eliminated, the majority of countries globally have eliminated gender discrimination and nationality laws. 75% of countries globally uphold gender equality in their nationality laws. Just under 90% of countries uphold citizens' equal right to confer nationality on their children, whether that's the mother or the father. At the same time, of course, why we're gathered here today, there are approximately 50 countries where families are suffering unnecessarily every day because of these discriminatory nationality laws. And societies are being held back. And why, if this is the case? So one, there is an important link actually with the legacy of colonialism. For many of the countries that still have gender discrimination in their nationality laws today, many of them, not all, but many are former colonies. And at the time of independence, the norm globally was to have gender discrimination in your nationality laws. And, you know, this might not be surprising as, you know, it's only been a number of decades until we've gotten rid of discrimination in many contexts in terms of women's right to vote, to own property, to be a legal adult in their own right. And so when many of the countries that remain with this discrimination got their independence, the norm at the time, including the former colonial powers, United Kingdom, France, Belgium, et cetera, had gender discrimination in their nationality laws. So many of these nationality laws that are in existence today were modeled on those other discriminatory nationality laws that were the norm at the time. So this is a really important fact because this subverts, it shows the fallacy of the notion that gender discrimination in nationality laws is actually a reflection of any local culture, region, religion, tradition. This is a myth that is held in some contexts, particularly amongst some in countries where these discriminatory laws persist. Gender discrimination in nationality laws is not rooted in any particular culture, region, or religion. In fact, when you think about the values and principles that all of the major religions embrace, the equal dignity of human beings, children and families' well-being, and the sanctity of that, no religions, not a single religion, calls for there to be gender discrimination in nationality laws. This is in reality a question for the civil state, a question of citizenship that is not related to religious beliefs. So what are some other things that we hear that come up in terms of why these laws persist? Well, in many contexts, and it's really unbelievable, or, you know, when you're operating in different contexts, you often hear on the other side of the globe from one country to another, almost identical concerns that are raised by those that might not yet be convinced of the need for reform. So some of the things that can also be raised is concerns around immigration and national identity. Now, you know, these concerns might be thinking about how many foreigners are going to become citizens. Will those other people take our jobs and hurt our economy? So there's a number of issues when you look at actually the economics of this that show that that's not the case. But let me table that for a moment and first say that in the first place, the right of men to confer citizenship is not questioned. That is considered an automatic right. So any of these concerns about immigration or national identity, those don't come up when it comes to men's ability to confer their citizenship. So as was indicated previously by Adriana, this relies on an assumption that it's okay to discriminate against women in the name of these other concerns. In reality, as you can hear, and I'll give another example in a moment, it's gender discrimination and nationality laws that's hurting societies by fostering poverty and exclusion and inhibiting inclusive development. So I'll add one more example from a Nepali mother that I know and have worked with. She was in Nepal and she met a Dutch man. They fell in love and he wanted to propose marriage to her. And she said, "I will only marry you if we can raise our family in Nepal." That was her firm requirement. And he said, absolutely. She jokes that her husband became, quote unquote, more Nepali than she is. He's fluent in Nepali. They raised their children there. Now, they were lucky because not all families that have children that don't have citizenship because of this discrimination, their children can't always fully access education. This family was well resourced. They were able to give their two children a good private education at the, coming out of their wallets. Now, those children, when they became young adults, they wanted to follow their professional careers in Nepal, but they didn't have status as citizens. So what did they do? They built very successful careers internationally. And what a loss is that for the country when young adults are forced to seek a life if they have the ability, if they have citizenship from their father and they have a travel document. If they don't have a travel document, then they're in a country and they have no nationality at all, not from their mother, not from their father. So this is just one more example of the ways in which countries are actually shooting themselves in the foot. You have the immense harm caused to affected families, but you have countries actually holding themselves back from benefiting from all of the children and the family members of their citizens' families. So the experiences of other countries that have enacted reforms have shown us that it is every country's best interest to uphold gender equality in their nationality laws. It is the right thing to do to recognize women and men's status as equal citizens. It's the smart thing to do to ensure that citizens' families are included in the social contract, that essential social contract that is citizenship. Lastly, in some contexts, and that is in large part because for many affected families, they're vulnerable because of their children or spouse's lack of status. There just frankly is insufficient attention and awareness to this issue. So they're not comfortable always sharing their stories and their struggles publicly, but they're suffering in silence. So this shows and underscores the importance of joining forces together to ensure that policymakers and the public understand that gender equality and nationality laws is the right thing to do. It's the best thing to do for families, and it's for society's well-being as a whole. The good news is there is clear momentum globally to end gender discrimination in nationality laws. This summit and those that are gathered here to endorse this goal is just one indication of this momentum that we're seeing. I want to emphasize again that gender equal nationality laws support inclusive and sustainable development, and they are also in line with countries' obligations under international law and the conventions that states have elected themselves to ratify and commit themselves to. So there is increasing awareness by policymakers that this reform is needed and should be prioritized and embraced for the reasons that we've heard. Each year, we're seeing progress. Most recently, just in the past few years, we've seen reforms to advance gender equality in nationality laws in countries including Benin, Liberia, Madagascar, Sierra Leone, and others. We're going to hear from additional governments today about their commitments to advance and address this issue, which is, we're so excited to hear from governments in the second section. There's also been important progress at the regional level. The West African organization ECOWAS has had a declaration that was endorsed by all ECOWAS member states in 2015 that calls for steps to eradicate statelessness, including upholding gender equality in nationality laws in line with countries' CEDAW obligations. So this Abidjan declaration was endorsed and signed by all ministers of justice for each ECOWAS member state. And we've seen similar declarations that have also been endorsed in other regions, including in the Great Lakes region, in the Southern African Development Forum, Parliamentary Forum, that was endorsed by parliamentarians there. And in 2018, the Arab League introduced the Arab Declaration on Belonging and Legal Identity, which calls on all Arab League members to uphold gender equality in their nationality laws, including women's equal right to confer citizenship to their children and their spouse. We're also seeing that the importance of ending gender discrimination in nationality laws is also consistently being raised by international human rights bodies, including the Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the Committee on the Rights of the Child, and through the Universal Periodic Review process, where peer member states are raising recommendations to countries under review when this issue is of a concern. Most importantly, because this issue can only be addressed by political leadership and will and action at the national level. We're seeing across impacted countries, affected mothers, children, political, civil society, and religious leaders coming together and calling for reforms. We're seeing courts affirming that constitutional articles that call for non-discrimination mean that nationality laws must uphold women and men's equality. At the same time, we must also recognize that in a portion of the countries where these discriminatory laws persist, there has yet to see at least a real commitment to address this issue. Or there have been very minor reforms that are proposed or enacted that might give women the chance to apply for their child to access citizenship, but only if they meet certain requirements. And this is still at the discretion of the state. And in fact, these laws even are rarely or unequally applied. In these same countries, children of male citizens automatically, without question, get citizenship by right. However, in many of these same countries as well, they have expressed a firm interest in advancing ambitious development plans, and they have expressed their interest to support women's economic empowerment and other forms of empowerment for women. Of course, we have to recognize that these bold development plans and the goal of supporting women's empowerment cannot be achieved without gender equality and nationality laws. This is something that I hope can be increasingly better appreciated and embraced everywhere. So what are the actions that we're calling for? Reforms without delay so that all citizens have the right, regardless of their sex, their gender, their marital status, that all parents, regardless of whether they're a mother or father, that all citizens have the equal right, regardless of gender, to confer nationality on their children and on their spouse, and to acquire, change, and retain their own nationality. We urge policymakers in affected countries that want to be leaders on this issue to work with affected people, that every policymaker should be talking with affected persons in their country. Those affected communities and activists will help give you the information that you need to convince your colleagues and other policymakers about why this reform is so essential. For other states and international organizations that want to champion this issue, again, you can hear from what we've heard today that this is such a cross-cutting human rights issue. Help to make these connections on how this issue intersects with other key human rights areas that are being raised in international fora, in your bilateral diplomacy, through the Universal Periodic Review process. And civil society, and I know we have many colleagues, not just in this room, but online. This is an issue, again, that intersects with so many areas: gender equality, children's well-being, displacement, development. We call on all of you to join forces with us and inform your colleagues about how this issue intersects with their work. Work in solidarity with those that are fighting for reforms, and ensure that this work is centered on the experiences and voices of affected activists. So I thank you for all of your support and attendance here today, and we really look forward to continuing on this work with all of you for equality to be represented in nationality laws. Thank you.